Sure.
We live in an era which is dictated by terms like globalization and competition, and where every business dreams to go international. But the sad truth behind the facade of international business is that it is easiest to dream, easier to procure resources, but not so easy to understand the law. Therefore, seizing the opportunity presenting in front of me, I, Ekta Burman, a CA Finance student from Lucknow, would like to present my views on the topic meaning of international transaction with regard to transfer pricing, and thereby taking a step in understanding international business. Since the introduction of transfer pricing norms in 2002, India has witnessed a flurry of litigation resulting in astronomical adjustments. The Government of India obviously sees transfer pricing as an emerging area for revenue generation. In the Finance Act 2012 and Finance Bill 2014, many amendments have come up. One of the major critical amendments, and also my topic for today's presentation, is the meaning of international transaction. For the purpose of better communication between us, I have divided my presentation into several parts and named them. The first part of my presentation is the reason being. Behind everything, there is a reason. So what is the reason that there is a need to understand the meaning of international transaction? The first reason, the very obvious and very notorious, is that we should abide by the law. And in order to do so, we need to understand what does the law says. The second reason is business requirement. If you want to run your business smoothly and efficiently without any hindrances, then you need to understand the rules, regulations and norms around which your business revolves. The third reason is that the meaning, the definition of international transaction has been designed in such a way that it leaves no room for those taxpayers who earn from the shortcomings of law. Therefore, if you do not want to find yourself or your business in the blacklist of government for the mere reason that you are ignorant of the law, then my dear friends, this presentation is of great importance to you. The second part of my presentation is learn to walk before you run. There are few terms which are used in the definition of international transaction many a times. We all know the meaning of these terms, but still there is a need to understand them because they form the base. I choose to call them the 4 pillars. The first pillar of my presentation is transaction. Transaction is an action, arrangement or action in concert, whether it is in formal or in writing, or whether to be intended to be enforceable by legal proceedings or not. Speaking in simple terms, transaction involves 5 major things: purchase, sale, transfer, lease or use of tangible property, intangible property, capital financing, which includes long-term and short-term borrowings, business reconstruction, and the last, provision of services. All in all, transaction is an inclusive definition in itself. Coming to the second pillar of my definition is the word intangible property. Intangible property includes or is related in 10 ways: marketing related, contract related, engineering related, goodwill related, location related, human capital related, customer related, artistic related, technology related, and data processing related. Now, as soon as I've said the word 10, it has rung a bell in many ears. How are we supposed to remember the 10 parts of intangible property? Let's take this in a different way. For a business to establish and run, there are 5 things that are very necessary. First, technology, location, human capital, customer and marketing. These form the first 5 parts of intangible property. Now that the business has been established, you need to learn it efficiently and for a longer period of time. For that you require contract, data processing, engineering, artistic and goodwill. These 5 points form the next 5 points of intangible property, all in all making 10 points. Now, coming to the third pillar of my presentation is the word associated enterprise. The law defines associated enterprise by dividing it into two parts. The first, enterprises which are regarded as associated enterprises, and secondly, enterprises which are deemed to be associated enterprises. We'll take them one by one. First, enterprises which are regarded as associate enterprises. If an enterprise participates directly, indirectly, or through one or more intermediaries in management, control, or capital of another enterprise, then it is regarded as an associate enterprise. Let's take an example. There is an enterprise called Kapil Enterprise. There is another enterprise called In-Laws Enterprise. And there is an intermediary known as Shimona. If Kapil Enterprise participates in the management, capital, or control of In-Laws Enterprise through an intermediary known as Shimona, then Kapil Enterprise and In-Laws Enterprise would be known as associated or regarded as associated enterprises. Now, coming to the second part. If a person participates directly, indirectly, or through one or more intermediaries in the management, control, or capital of two enterprises, then those two enterprises would be regarded as associate enterprise. Let's take the same names. Shimona as a person participates in Kapil Enterprise, and Shimona as a person participates in In-Laws Enterprise. Then these two enterprises are regarded as associate enterprise. The second part of the definition of associated enterprise is deemed to be associated enterprise. Deemed to be associated enterprise have been divided into several parts. Now these divisions are not by law, but I have made the division for better understanding and for learning purpose. The first major head of deemed to be associated enterprise is voting and influence. If an enterprise holds more than 26% of voting power of another enterprise, or if a person holds more than 26% power of voting power of two enterprises, or if one enterprise sells goods to other enterprise and influences its price, or if one enterprise supply and influence the price and other conditions of other enterprise which equals to 90% or more of raw material and consumables, then all these enterprises would be deemed to be associated enterprise under the category voting and influence. The second category that I have divided or which I have formed is business interest. If an enterprise holds 10% interest in another enterprise, or is there a mutual relationship of interest between two enterprises, or if business of one enterprise is dependent entirely on the business of other enterprise, then all these would be regarded or deemed as, or rather I say deemed as associated enterprise. The third category of my deemed to be associated enterprise is loans and guarantees. If an enterprise issues 10% guarantee to a bank on behalf of another enterprise, and that 10% guarantee is 10% borrowings of that enterprises, then they are deemed to be associated enterprise. Or if an enterprise advances loan to another enterprise and the amount of loan equals to 51% of book value of total assets of that enterprise, then it will be deemed to be associated enterprise. The fourth category which I have formed is membership. If two enterprises are controlled by same individual or HUF or any relative jointly or separately, or if two enterprises have been in the directors of two enterprises have been appointed by same person, or if an enterprise has appointed more than half of directors of another enterprises, then all these would be deemed to be associated enterprises. Now, this was the four categories of associated enterprises. Now I come to the fourth pillar which I was talking about earlier. That is the term non-resident Indian. The law is a bit slick in this matter. It has not defined what non-resident Indians are. Rather, it continues on defining what residents of India are. According to the law, If an individual stays in India for more than 182 days in the previous financial year, or if the individual stays in India for more than 365 days in the previous financial year, and 60 days in that same financial year, then they would be regarded as residents of India. All the other citizens who do not fall in the above mentioned category would be termed as non-resident India. Now that the base has been formed, let's come to the next part of my presentation, which I call quoting the law. As per the law, a transaction between two associated enterprises, either one or both of whom are non-resident, in the nature of sale, purchase or use of tangible property, intangible property, provision of services, short-term borrowings, long-term borrowings, or any other transaction having a bearing on income, profit, losses or assets of such enterprises, and shall include mutual agreements or arrangement between two associated enterprises for the allocation, apportionment or contribution to any cost or expenses incurred or to be incurred in relation to a benefit or future benefit. Now, as soon as I say this definition, on the outset it seems quite complicated. But if we remove the 17 ors mentioned in this definition becomes quite easy and can be summarized in the following 4 points. First, it is between two or more associated enterprises. Second, either or both of them has to be non-resident. Third, they should have a bearing on profit, income, losses or assets of such enterprises. And the fourth point, it revolves around mutual agreements also. This was one of the most technical and typical part of my presentation. Now I come to the next part of my presentation, that is, which I choose to call as divide and learn. In this part of my presentation, I have picked up such terms or phrases from the definition which are a bit difficult to understand and need to be understood separately. The first part which I have picked up is the phrase either or both of whom are non-residents. Now, as soon as I say this, it creates a deeming fiction that if an enterprise comes into a transaction with an unrelated party, and that unrelated party and associate enterprise of the enterprise I mentioned earlier have a contract or mutual contract between them, then the transaction thus entered would be termed as international transaction. What had happened up till now, that the residents or the taxpayers of India used to do not fall into this category by saying that the third unrelated party is the resident party. Now let's look at this example or understand this with an example. There is an enterprise A who is a non-resident. There is an enterprise B who is a resident. Enterprise A and enterprise B are both associated enterprises. Now, enterprise A enters into a transaction with an unrelated party who is a resident of India. According to the law, if such thing happens, then it would be an international transaction because it follows all the rules and regulations of international transaction. By this I mean, the residential status of the unrelated party is of no consequence in deciding whether a transaction is international transaction or not. It is up to the two associated parties to decide whether the transaction is international or not. The second phrase or the second word which I am taking into discussion is capital financing. There is an enterprise A and there is an enterprise B. B is an associated enterprises of A. Now, A has paid money for share application money in the company B, and in A's balance sheet it is shown share application money pending allotment. The case here is that allotment money has been pending for a long time. So the authorities come up with the question that since it has been pending for a for a long period of time, it should be treated as an interest-free loan and thus come in the purview of international transaction, whether this is right or not. As per the law, international transaction is a transaction which happens between two associated enterprises. Either or both of them has to be non-resident. And the international transaction should involve the flow of, or it should involve any transaction having a bearing of income, profit, losses or assets of such enterprises. Since the law does not create any deeming provision that if application money pending allotment has been shown in the balance sheet for quite a long time, it should be treated as interest, it should be treated as loan. Therefore, the authorities have no right to say so. The authority's subjugation this matter is of purely no consequence since no such deeming provisions is written in the law. Moreover, the law says that you cannot change the true nature of transaction. The true nature of the transaction was that application money was given and shares were purchased. It does not anywhere says that it has to be treated as a loan. Therefore, the authorities cannot do so. Now, coming to the third part which I have taken up for discussion is bearing on profit, income, losses or assets. C. An enterprise E has issued guarantee on behalf of its AE to a bank. In such a transaction, the enterprise E occurred no cost at all, whether this transaction would be regarded as international transaction. As per the law, since no bearing on income, profit, losses or assets have been incurred, as no cost was incurred in such a transaction, therefore it cannot be regarded as an international transaction. C. The bearing on profits, income or losses or assets can be in present times or in future times but cannot be hypothetical. In this situation, a bank guarantee, the only things that comes into mind is hypothetical bearing, not real bearing. Therefore, according to the law, such a transaction is not an international transaction. Now, coming to the fourth part of my presentation is the term mutual agreement. There is a holding company ABC US, which has a subsidiary ABC India. Now ABC India sold its medical imaging business to XYZ India. Whether this would be termed as an international transaction. My dear friends, this would not be an international transaction because ABC India has sold its business to XYZ India. It has got nothing to do with its holding company ABC US because there was no mutual agreement between such parties, neither there was a written contract that such things would happen in it. Therefore, ABC US has played no role in the sale of medical imaging business from ABC India to XYZ India. And since both of them are resident enterprises, therefore it does not fall in the category of international transaction. Now, coming to the last part of my presentation is author's view. As professionals and future chartered accountants, my role does not limit to the fact that I should understand and analyze the definition, but I should also be able to present my views on it. I have divided my views into 2 points, ups and downs of the definition. According to me, the up of the definition is that it leaves no room for ambiguities. The definition is wide in itself and constitute of any transaction and every transaction that can happen in real scenario. The down of the definition is that if subscription of shares is taking place, then it also be treated as international transaction. Therefore, companies who undertake only one transaction in the entire year, that is subscription of shares, also have to fill Form 3 CEB. Another up according to me is that it includes marketing intangibles. Another down according to me is that the use of the term either or both. The use of the term either or both in says or it refers that there can be only two enterprises, but this is not the case. This is a small mistake of law, and according to me it should be only one or by all. Coming to the last part of my definition, which says ending makes way for a new beginning. I'll end my presentation from where I have begun, that how you need to understand international business. For me, knowledge is the key. What we should always remember is that no matter what go, we would not let knowledge be the barrier between us and our goals, therefore achieving them to our fullest. Thank you.